All right, thank you. I'm going to have to get used to this microphone. So, yeah, you can just tell me if it's not working. Okay, so why us, just to start? So within an engineering context, we spend a lot of time working with students in teams. Teamwork is really central to engineering workplaces. It's also a requirement of the CAB graduate attributes. And so, as you heard in our introduction, both Ted and I work within ISTEP, within the Institute for Transdisciplinary Engineering Education and Practice, and that institute sort of supports those transdisciplinary competencies that are really valuable for engineers. And so we find ways to not only have students work in teams, but to teach teaming. And so this presentation developed out of a session that we gave at CTSI a few months ago on building team projects and team assessment, so teaching team in that way. And what we discovered in that session is that a lot of the participants were particularly interested in the challenges and opportunities of an online and a hybrid environment. And so we sort of crafted this session out of that one. But we did want to make this session a little bit interactive, so you may be ready to kill us soon. We'll see how this works out. We wanted to give you an opportunity to experience working in a hybrid team. So the way that we're going to do this, and I'm now seeing we have such a large group that we could just do it by table rather than counting them out. Does that work for you, Ted?
We need to combine some tables. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah. So we'll combine maybe this table at the front, I hope you don't mind, with maybe we could go with that table because I see they have a couple of extra spots. And at every table, is there somebody who has headphones? Does anybody have any headphones in here that connect to their computer? If you have headphones, AirPods, go ahead and just put up your hand.
And a computer, right?
Yeah, or their phone would be fine. Yeah? This is great. So, Estelle, you have a set? Amazing. So you're online, okay? So you're going to be the online member of your team. And do you have a set? Okay, great. So you're going to be online. Anybody else have a set of headphones? Yeah? Okay, so I'm going to ask you to join maybe with this group, okay? And you're going to be the online member, okay? Anybody else? Come on, there's not only 3 sets of headphones in here. Oh yeah, I don't care what it is, as long as you can hear it with your ears. Okay, great. So I'm going to say that you'll join with a group behind you, okay? And then nobody have any, no?
I have mine.
They might not want to put your headphones in their ears. I don't know about that. But Emily, I trust your ability to hear without. Do you have a phone? Yeah. Great. Okay. So I think we now have one person at every table that is online. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just within your table, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to get set up for this team exercise. Okay. And so what the team. No, because this team they're going to join with that back team. And
so
oh yeah, so the online people are going to come to the front after we get started.
Online and remote.
Okay, yeah. Okay. And here is the activity, okay? So we have this lovely space in here, right? This beautiful classroom with all of these monitors around us. Your group, this hybrid team, is going to generate a plan to use this classroom for team presentations, okay? So a very simple design problem. The monitors will be at the tables and not the front, so just as you see them now, this poses a challenge. So we're gonna ask you to organize the day to allow 6 teams to present to the whole class. You want students close to the presenters asking questions, not far away. So how will you configure this classroom space or have the students move around the classroom to be able to engage with the presentations? And how will you deal with the timing to allow for that, given that the class is 2 hours long, each team has 15 minutes. So we're gonna give you, it says 10 minutes, we're actually gonna give you 8 minutes because we thought this might take a little while to get started. So, but before you start work on your actual task, you need to figure out with your hybrid team member how they're going to communicate with you. So how are they going to communicate? It's up to you to ensure that that hybrid team member feels like they're a part of your group. okay? And we're gonna actually get the hybrid team members to get up from their table and move up here to the front, okay? Any questions about that? Yeah, so you have 2 minutes to figure out how you're gonna deal with them, and then they're gonna go over here to this hybrid space, this online space, okay? Okay.
All right, how do I sound? Good? Okay. Okay, so we're gonna bring it back in. All right, so back to the front, please. I think we have someone in the hallway, if you could let them know to come back. I know we could do this a lot longer. This could have been like a 2-hour workshop if we did everything we planned on. I think it was originally like an hour and a half, the first version. But all right, so first, who has the solution?
There's one solution, one correct solution.
Who has a good solution? Good. It's summer. I'm not sharp. Sorry. Yeah. Who thinks they got close to figuring out how to run a presentation day in this room? I heard you all talking about moving the tables. What was your idea?
We were saying to have line up the tables in 2 long rows, and that way you kind of swing backwards and forwards depending on if you're presenting here or there.
Okay. I can see that. But actually, we're not that interested in that. Because this was kind of...
We don't really care.
Yeah, it was kind of an arbitrary thing to get you working and trying to do anything. We actually thought probably just understanding what the prompt was asking you for was probably going to be difficult enough to get to really what our point is. Although there might be something to that idea. We do actually run presentations in this room, and it is a genuine problem. But so I'll deal with the future consideration first before we get into actually what we can talk about. I think accessibility, universal design are always very important, especially when you think about EdTech. We don't really have time to get into here. There's been some excellent work in other areas of the conference. Just want to acknowledge that there's definitely tie-ins there for different forms of accessibility. I mean, especially important thing nowadays is commuter students. People are on the train. I've been on meetings with people on the GO train, like pretty recently. So these things are very important to think about. But we want to get to a more local experience. Like how successful? Does anybody want to take a shot at how successful your team was as kind of teaming quickly and being effective in this hybrid environment? Or challenges you faced?
It was challenging not having Estelle in the room, being at home and not being able to see the room and hear us very well when we were talking.
Mm-hmm.
So including her was a challenge.
Okay. So what was your perspective on that?
That was difficult.
Yeah.
And, but you know what I appreciated was when we saw the method in your ways and we thought, you know what, let's just stop and let's just introduce ourselves and understand sort of who we're working with beforehand to try and establish. And I did appreciate that Sonia took the lead in like trying to take the computer and pass it around so I could hear everybody clearly, but it was challenging to get on the same page.
Okay, cool. Just on like what we were actually doing.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
What the task was, right? Yeah. Anyone have any other kind of successes or challenges you want to share here?
I don't know if it was intentional, but having all of us in the room trying to talk on the computer and else's voices makes it hard to hear what the person on the computer is saying, right? So maybe that's why you're asking us for headphones and stuff. But
Yeah.
I know that was part of the workshop, but that also kind of to communicate with the hybrid person.
Yeah, I mean, that's an added challenge. I mean, probably in a real situation, people are more commonly in quiet spaces. But sometimes people
Often in a design room, we'll have our students working in hybrid teams and, you know, they're in a loud space like this one, and then they're trying to connect with people remotely. So, and as you know, it's very difficult.
Yeah, we had communication instructors with COVID that were trying to do this, and like the exact thing you're talking about, right? Because it's a good to have a loud classroom, people are talking, but then it adds those challenges, right? Yeah.
I think we realized that our task was to figure out the use of physical space with someone who was not in that physical space. So realizing we would have to walk around the room with the laptop to show that other person this is what we're dealing with, and how we go about that.
Yeah. I feel like maybe all the teams were doing that at some level, right? Yeah.
I was going to say on that end, this was with my teams, that I felt like I need to advocate for myself to share what my needs are and let them know hey, I don't know what the space looks like, or realizing that I can't speak because it's very loud in this space, so I'm just typing instead.
So did those online individuals, did you end up doing a lot of typing in the chat? Is that what was happening, or?
I did some typing. I don't know.
With my group, we had a bit of a connection issue. I'm not sure what it was. Like, I actually don't know what happened because we weren't able to really connect until like the last minute, where I was like finally able to see and hear them. And the other contributing factor was because it was spontaneous and not really planned. I have like 7% on my battery, so like a good percentage of my attention was just like kind of diverted to just like checking as it was like going down. And like, guys, I'm sorry if I just like randomly drop off. My phone's gonna die.
I'm sorry. No, you're gonna have to recharge your phone after this session.
I have an office that has a thing, but like that, like it's those really tiny little things that just kind of, if it's a spontaneous grouping, that you can.
But we're gonna talk about the team charter assignment in a second, but multiple versions that I read they have a contingency section, and there are multiple contingencies, like if a remote person doesn't have power or doesn't have internet connection or something like that. So like obviously these teams had run into this issue and put it into later versions of their charters to kind of plan for it, right? So I think we're hearing a lot of what our students go through. I think we have heard from the back.
One more, because I realize we only have 10 minutes for strategy.
So I haven't heard from the back table, I'm sorry, but yeah. What was the experience back there?
Okay, I will go for it. We had practically the same issue, like the person who was online couldn't actually engage in our discussion because like she couldn't hear anything that we were saying, and didn't have a good idea of the room and like how we have to move around, move the teams around in order to make the assignment.
Okay. Do we have time for the last two bullet points, or do you want to? Yeah.
No. I don't think so, because we only have 10 minutes left in the session.
Okay. Yeah. So on your own time, think about how you would have done it differently. And maybe like what, like I didn't make up the perfect thing for you to smoothly experience this. So think about what it was about the decisions that we made. Like we could have told hybrid people to go outside, and that might have helped. One of you did do that, right? So that is interesting, but we decided to be like, let's put them in a loud room, make it as challenging as possible, right? So that kind of sometimes messing things up can show you like what course design can be, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, as Ted noted, we kind of gave you this tough scenario. It was noisy, it was distracting in here. And one of the things that we kind of really wanted to emphasize is that teams are always tough. Teamwork is tough. Group work is one thing, teamwork is an entirely different thing. So when we think about group work, we think about basically taking a project and breaking it into chunks that can be handled separately without a real need for collaboration, right? Like those things can be handled independently. But when we're looking at teamwork, we're looking at people working together and innovating and solving problems together. And that can be even more difficult when you're in an online environment or a hybrid environment. And I think in those instances, it becomes even more important to think about how we're most effectively supporting students. So what we thought we'd do in just the last close to 10 minutes is talk about some of the specific strategies we use in the courses that we teach that work to kind of set up, I guess, a safety net for effective team functioning in online, hybrid, and as well in in-person environments. So often these are just adapted from what we would do in person. So first of all, we think about teaching team as opposed to just breaking students into teams. So what skills and how do you scaffold those team situations? And I'm going to talk about 3 different strategies that I use in my courses and I know that Ted uses as well. So one of these is team inventories, another one is team charters, and another one is actually teaching the process of giving and receiving feedback and what that looks like. So team inventories, it can be used just as effectively online as it can be in person, and it really gives students an opportunity to brainstorm and reflect upon what they bring to the team environment before they get started. So we would use this typically in a sort of team forming situation. So when you're just getting to know each other, Ted and I, as people were talking, we were speculating that perhaps people who knew people at their table were finding this exercise a little bit easier than those people who were completely fresh to a team and didn't know about the backgrounds or expertise or interests of those that they were working with. So this is a really great strategy to just get students thinking about what they bring and sharing that in a very transparent and open way with their team members. And also, thinking about the challenges that they may encounter. And in a hybrid team, you're going to face a lot of those challenges. So often getting them on the table up front is going to help potentially to eliminate some of the stress that they may encounter later. Thanks, I forgot. Team charters. So this is another way of sort of getting that conversation down on paper. So they've done a team inventory, they've thought about the skills that they bring as well as the challenges, and then the team charter works to sort of plan ahead and mitigate potential areas of challenge. So as Ted noted, often students will have a section on contingency planning. What do we do when we can't actually connect remotely as we'd planned? So getting that down. And as Ted will discuss shortly, because we're teaching this, we're building this into assignments that are getting sort of feedback and coaching from professors or TAs as students generate these documents. And then another thing that I think is really important, and this is something that is a model that was developed in iLead. So one of our other co-instructors, Patricia Sheridan, was involved in our original CTSI workshop. She's not here today because she has a 3-day-old, so she's probably having more fun right now. No, this is great, but babies are cute. Okay, so this is Patricia's model that they use in iLead and iStep more generally, which is teaching students how to give feedback through an aid model. So, pointing out what's happening, talking about its impact, and providing a solution. And we've adapted this to sort of giving written feedback as well. So it's a little bit different, but specifying, explaining the problem, and then recommending a solution. So actually teaching this feedback up front, I think eliminates some of the resistance that students may encounter when giving feedback to their peers. So just making all of that easier to do in a team situation. I think you're up, Ted.
Yeah, and the team charter as well, and as well as a few of the slides that you saw were also Patricia, so I just want to give some credit there. So thinking about kind of the concepts behind, we mentioned like psychological safety and kind of ways of working. We even started to get into types of meetings, like structured meetings, open meetings, which I think the students found really useful this year in our course. But we also have these targeted interventions. So we generally work with large courses with somewhat limited teaching kind of facilities. So you can't have a teacher with a team the whole time, and that's also not really productive. So we kind of target our interventions. This is an example of the timeline for that course that Lydia will identify for a little bit, but just some of the focuses are kind of taking those concepts we teach in the lecture and kind of showing it in process and experience.
So that timeline you can see in the black is just a project core, and those blue annotations are points where students are giving and receiving feedback, and that's supported by meetings with TAs that are also sort of providing their feedback as well.
Yeah, and we also have like conflicts that come up, especially in our course. Steve, you know about this. Team conflicts that often get kicked up to the teamwork lecturer. So if the TA and the CI and the other instructors in the course aren't like making headway with the team, we'll take them to the expert. So that team gets like the support that they need based on like level of conflict, intractability of contract, et cetera. We also have some reflective documents in here as well as team charter, all of which give feedback and give instructors a chance to say, I don't know if this strategy is going to work. You know what, let's talk about this way of working you developed after the project requirements document is due. We'll see if it really worked out that well. And that kind of leads to, this is going to be a second one. I'll get to that in a second. Because this is EdTech, we're talking about technological affordances. Haynes is writing about language learning, and language learning is really, really good, I think. I'm in linguistics, applied linguistics, when I'm not here. And I've done a lot of research that I think applies really well to any kind of teaching that involves language, which is all teaching. So Haynes is someone who's really good just about leveraging technology and teaching students how to use technology. Like if you're learning a language remotely, learn about the technology itself, and then, because that's the medium through which you're learning the language. And I think the same would go for any kind of teaching. So I would recommend Haynes on that. Computer-supported collaborative learning. This kind of comes out of sociocultural theory, applying it to computer-mediated learning. Gary Stahl's really good on this. Actually, the first ever CSCL conference was at OISE in something like 1997, I think. He talks about zones of proximal development, like that happens, and he talks about there being 6 people on a team in an online environment is enough to have social presence, enough to gain trust, and against the learning from each other. So it's a huge field, a lot of really interesting stuff there if you ever want to look at more. And another thing that they come up to is that a lot of their research kind of comes back to what happens in person. So that when you learn what works in a computer kind of supported or mediated environment, it's often the same thing that works in person, but you have to be a little bit more explicit, you have to be a little bit more active. We have to, during COVID, we sent the TAs just into group meetings, right? Like you can't, like at a tutorial, you can kind of drop in. But if it's all online, you kind of need to go in there and be a little bit more direct.
Just a note on that, in one of my courses, I set up individual breakout rooms for each of the teams, and so, and I'm sure other people here have done the same thing, but otherwise I just found that it was difficult for TAs to connect with each of the teams, so having them in one breakout room allowed them to just check in on them.
Yeah, and this more stuff on things that work in person but are especially needed online. Iteration, we do team charters twice because they don't take it seriously. But then they have team conflicts, and then they come back and do it again, and they get much better, and they realize the value of it. So a lot of this stuff, you hear a lot of things, oh, we tried team charter, they didn't get anything out of it. But did you do it twice, right? How much was it worth? Was it worth 3% or 10%? Like these things kind of matter and how you emphasize things. And the reflective documents too, so they get to reflect on their teamwork, how their team operated, how their charter operated, and how they operated on a team. Which leads us to, this is a slide that Patricia and I used in our course this year. Just always be reflective. Just always thinking, if anyone's read Donald Schoen, I'm very influenced by him in this. Reflection in action. Never just try to finish the assignment, know what the assignment's about, that get to that kind of deep learning about it. And because this is something that students don't often come with the critical thinking and critical reflection skills. So sometimes you have to be really explicit about that. And finally, shout out to, this is Patricia Sheridan's hybrid teaming handbook. This is available for free, PDF. It's about 30 pages. Really excellent stuff just on teamwork in general, but also applying it to hybrid and online learning environments. A lot of good things about work-life balance and stuff is like the first 7 pages, taking care of yourself, mental health, trust, psychological safety, stuff like that. All right. Anything I missed there?
We have no more time.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I don't think we even have time for questions because I know the next group is kind of looking at the door right now. But thank you for participating in that kind of nutty exercise at the beginning. I think it was a good kind of teachable for me to see how much you were all struggling with it, for sure. And hopefully it gives you some food for thought as you kind of work with teams in future that may be in hybrid environments. And we're here now if you have any other questions.
Oh, yeah, we can hang out, yeah.
Yeah. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.